America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah.
Number 4 on the agenda, adoption of minutes in the regular meeting of September 16, 2014. Do I have a motion? Thank you. I will second. Discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstention? Thank you. Motion carries 4-2. 4-0-2. Moving to the superintendent's update and comments.
I'd like to begin this evening by extending on behalf of our district certainly condolences to the Cutinella family at the tragic loss of their son Thomas. I think that this kind of a situation certainly raises for many people the question about student safety, and I just wanted to share with the public and the board that I believe Hauppauge has done as much as they can in terms of maintaining safety for our student athletes. I have an article that will be going in the Horizons to share with the public the kinds of things that we do. For your information, at all of our football games, not only do we have a doctor there and an athletic trainer, but we do also have an ambulance there. We pay to have an ambulance at every varsity level football game, just for the safety of our students. I also want to thank our Director of Athletics, who is here today, Mr. Dan Butler. He did take the time to write a letter to all of our fall student athletes in the wake of the situation and share with them that we have resources for any students or any staff who may indeed need to speak with counselors or social workers about the situation. He also took the time, I believe, to meet with the football team personally and the captains in order to share some thoughts and assess how our students were reacting to the tragedy. Tonight there is a library bond referendum vote, and the polls do close at 9 p.m. this evening, so depending upon when our meeting ends, we may have to break from the meeting for a little while and come back, because it is the Board of Education's responsibility to accept the results of the library vote officially. So we will be receiving word after the polls close. I want to thank the Facilities Committee. They concluded their work with the meeting yesterday. James Stuccio has been in charge of that committee, working for over a year now. At our next Board of Education meeting, we will have a public presentation to the board about the recommendations from the Facilities Committee, and then the board will have the opportunity to discuss how much of the recommendation package they're interested in taking in terms of advisory, and if indeed we do, how we would plan to finance the facility upgrades that we really believe need to take place within our district. On the 17th of this month, please everybody remember, it is Kicks for Cancer. It is an annual event in our district where we raise money for the Cancer Society in memory of Courtney Tompkin. You may notice tonight that most of the people seated here at the dais are wearing some kind of pink or a pink ribbon, and that's because this month is Cancer Awareness Month, and Mr. Scarito pointed out to us that maybe as others are doing, it might be a good thing for us to show our support for the cause as well. 4 p.m. is the boys' game, 6 p.m. is the girls' game, and then if you want to stay, go right into our high school auditorium to see our drama presentation, 12 Angry Men. Is that? Pardon me? Inherit. Oh, Inherit the Wind, my other famous word, Inherit the Wind, thank you. I am delighted to inform everybody that in addition to our National Merit semifinalists, which I announced at our last meeting, we have 6 Recognized and commended students, Jonathan Castro, Luke Farrell, Shirkan Gumadevelli, close, I'm sorry, Emily Linko, Nadia Moeen, and Leland Greasefield. So congratulations to them. And also congratulations to our top 10 students who have been announced. Our valedictorian is Emily Linko. Our salutatorian is Luke Farrell. And the remaining top 10 students are Daniel Nasta, Stephen Kim, Jacqueline Michaels, Sean McCabe, David Pogrivallo, Esther Kim, Natalie Cordovez, and Emmanuel Alejandro Bazin Bergamino. Those are our top 10 students. So we're very proud of them and all they've accomplished. And I just want to close by thanking the Forest Brook principal and faculty for asking me to participate, and Mr. Tasman did too, in the ALS Bucket Challenge at Forest Brook. It was just a pleasure getting soaked, and actually the kids had a great time. It was a wonderful event, and they have now challenged the Bretton Woods School, so I'm waiting for the Bretton Woods School to participate in the challenge. That being said, the final thing that I would like to mention is that we have a teacher here in the audience tonight, Melora Lane, and Melora's resignation is on our agenda tonight, and we are sad to see you leave, Melora, and just wish you all the best for all good things in your future.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Turning to the number 6 on the agenda, question and comments regarding tonight's agenda only. Any members of the public like to be heard? Seeing none, moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that members would like to have severed or removed from the consent agenda? Mr. Scrito?
7.2, C, 6 and 7, please. Seven point three D2, and then 7.4 C.
Anyone else? I'd like to have 7.1A removed. Do I have a motion concerning the consent agenda, less those items that have been removed?
So moved.
Thank you. I will second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Turning to the items that were severed, starting with 7.1A, do I have a motion? Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion fails. 2, 0, 4 abstentions. Turning to 7.2 C, 6 and 7. Can those be taken together, Mr. Scrito?
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. I will second. Discussion? Mr. Scrito?
Maybe it's
It is on.
okay. On the robotics, I see that we're rescinding Mr. Dowd from 175 hours. But then on the appointment, it's now 225 hours. I'm just trying to find out where to get it to 50 hours.
Yes, the 50 hours was in our budget, it just wasn't appointed previously.
So the additional 50 hours, it wasn't appointed at the first time, it's now appointed now, so there's 225 hours left to get appointed, so that's why there's an additional 50 hours.
So if we had stuck with the original one, 50 hours is what it went.
No, we didn't have a person to fill that 50 hours, so now we have the person who's going to fill not only the 50 hours, but split the total 225 hours.
We were budgeted for 225, we didn't hit those. Thank you.
Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. 7.3B2, do I have a motion?
So moved.
I will second. Discussion. Mr. Scarito?
James, on the budgets, you have the reserve and you have the unfunded reserve balances. It's almost like $10 million in the general fund balance. You see what I'm saying?
I believe you're looking at the trial balance?
Yes.
And you're looking at the bottom of the trial balance.
Correct.
And I'll take you up from the bottom here. The reserve accounts that you see, those are all the amounts in all of the actual of those reserves. Then there's something called appropriated fund balance, which is the last line. That's the money that we appropriated from last year left over to lower taxes this year. So that was the $5.9 million plus the money for the roof that we did the budget revision this past August. And then the line above that, A909, the $4.1 million, that's the 4% unreserved, undesignated that we would carry each and every year in case there was an unforeseen.
Which is carried.
The $4 million is the carryover, 4%. The rest, that $6 million, is being applied to this year's budget to help lower taxes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on 7.3B2? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. 7.4C, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, I will second. Discussion. Mr. Scarito?
The only thing I ask is if we just look into possibly, look into going, seeing if we can, there's a lot of textbooks there, so I don't know if there's any way we can just look into it. I just don't want to drop the ball on that. I saw them in the transfer.
You'd like to see them recycled?
I'd like to see us go over it, yes, please.
Can we look into that?
Yes. We can
Thank you.
certainly look into that.
Thank
I
you.
think that's an excellent idea, Mr. Scarito. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. That concludes the consent agenda. Moving to number 8 on the agenda, the tax levy. Mr. Stuccio, would you like to talk a little bit about this, please? Thank you.
Just waiting for this to warm up a second, but just wanted to take a few moments, and only a few moments tonight, to review with the board the projected tax rates and what we determined that the actual tax rates will be now that we have all the assessed value and equalization rates in for the 2014 tax levy year. So school tax levy, many of you have seen this before, so again, we will move through this quickly, but please feel free to stop me with any questions. And what I'll start first with is the definition of value and assessments, and property assessments. And you'll see what we call full value. That's the market value of a property, the market value of your home. This is if you were to put your home up for sale or put up a commercial building up for sale. The full value is what somebody would pay for that at the current moment in time. However, then there's something else called assessed value. And assessed value is the value of a property for the purposes of paying property taxes. And in most taxing jurisdictions, the assessed value is nowhere near the full value of the property. And there's a relationship between the two, but generally the assessed value is a much, much lower number. Unlike in Nassau County, where the county does all the assessments, and there are a whole host of issues there, here in Suffolk County, in most counties in the state, the towns are responsible for assessing properties. So that means the town of Islip and the town of Smithtown are responsible for assessing your homes and all the commercial property in those towns and within the school district. Now, just a brief review. I don't know if we talked about this in the spring, but a brief review of how the tax levy for a school district, or really any taxing jurisdiction, it could be the fire district, the library district, etc., how they're divided among homeowners. Well, let's say you have a tax levy, a hypothetical tax levy of $1, and you have 4 homes, and they each miraculously have an equal value. That is very simple. Because the homes all each have an equal value, they all pay an equal share of the tax levy. So in this example, there are 4 homes, they each pay a quarter for that $1 tax levy. The same is true, let's say you only have 3 homes, but they're still of equal value, and you have $1 as a tax levy, and therefore, because they're again equal, it would be 33 cents, 0.3333, for each of the homes, because again, although we went down from 4 to 3, they are still an equal value. They'll just pay slightly more for the dollar tax levy. Now, here's the tricky part. This Hauppauge School District, as are many school districts in the state of New York, we are not confined to traditional political boundaries such as a town. We're not in one town, we're not one full town. We're actually split between 2 towns. So how do you divide the tax levy between 2 towns, for which the Hauppauge School District is the town of Smithtown and the town of Islip? Well, if the value of all of the property in Smithtown and Islip were equal, and I have these 2 houses of the same size, hypothetical equal value, then they would each pay 50% for a $400,000 tax levy, $200,000 and $200,000. However, this is never the case. So let's take a look at the next example. And let's say the property value, both commercial and residential, for the town of Smithtown is higher than the property value of the town of Islip for the Hauppauge School District. I'm talking about the Hauppauge School District boundaries only. Well, in this example, that same $400,000 tax levy would be split a little differently. Since Islip has less of a value than Smithtown, Smithtown would pay more. So in this example, with the $400,000 tax levy, Smithtown would pay $300,000, Islip would pay $100,000, and it would be 75-25. Again, I'm oversimplifying it, but this is in essence how the tax levy is divided between the 2 towns. So here's the issue. The town of Smithtown values homes for assessed value at a much lower rate than the town of Islip. They do not communicate, they do not work together. It's apples and oranges. So how do we make those apples and oranges, apples and apples, or pineapples and pineapples, so that the Hauppauge School District can fairly appropriate tax levy between the 2 different towns? And the state of New York developed something called an equalization rate. This is developed by the Office of Real Property Tax Services, which is now part of the New York State Department of Taxation. And they developed what's called an equalization rate, or the measure of the municipality and the town's measure of the assessment. And it's a very simple ratio. They take the assessed value, which in this first example is $200,000, and they put it over the market value, and the dividend is the 1.0, which would be the equalization rate. Now this would be the case if the assessed value was at market value. That's happening nowhere. So let's say it's a little different. Let's say the assessed value is half. The assessor's assessing property at half of what the market value is at the time. Then that would be an equalization rate of 0.5, or the assessed value is 50% of what the market value is. And here you take this example, you start with market value, you multiply it, and I use the equalization rate for the town of Smithtown. The town of Smithtown right now is assessing property at 1.37% of what the market value is. So you take the market value, you multiply it by the 1.37% for the town of Smithtown, and the assessed value for that home in Smithtown on the tax bill would be listed at $6,017. You can also take that $6,017 divided by Smithtown's equalization rate, and you can come to the market value of $439,197. And again, because both towns assess property differently, these rates are needed. In Smithtown, it's 1.37% of market value, and in the town of Islip, we're a little better, it's 13.2% of market value is their assessed value. So let's take a look at the tax levy and what we talked about in May and what's actually the case here in October. You'll see, most importantly, in the green, the tax levy, $81,191,357. This is a tax-compliant, tax-freeze compliant levy, which means everybody will shortly, but probably sometime in November, maybe even early December at this point, receive their rebate checks. That's not to be confused with the rebate checks you got last week. Those were for the child credits, but you will receive the rebate for the increase in property taxes from the state because we are a freeze-compliant tax levy budget. In May, we forecasted the $81 million tax levy. October, we have the same exact tax levy. There's been exactly no change. However, based on the tax levy increase and last year's assessed value and equalization rates, the tax rate increases were 2.14% in each town. Now, in October, with the new data, we're estimating the tax rate increase to be 5% in the town of Islip and 5.23% in the town of Smithtown, which is a change listed up there. So why did this happen? Why do we see this deviation? We've seen this deviation each and every year, but I will review it. What causes the changes? Well, first, let's take a look at this picture, and you'll see that this is historic, that the difference in the budget and the tax levy increase and the taxes. You'll see actually last year the increase in taxes for Smithtown was 6.5% as opposed to the 3.6% tax levy. And in the town of Islip it was an increase of 4%. And you'll see for the past few years, Smithtown has been paying a slightly higher portion. Then in 9-10 we had a year where it was similar to this year where we were almost equal, 4.5, 4.3%. And then for many years before that, the town of Islip was paying a little bit more. And the reason why we have these differences, once again, is because of the changes in assessed value and equalization rates, and because we are located between two different towns. So I've covered that. It's important to remind everybody that the school district only sets the tax levy. As I showed in my previous slide, we are still only going to raise $81 million and change. We're not going to raise 1 penny more than that tax levy amount that we forecasted back in May. But the tax rates are determined by the towns, and they are functions of equalization rates and assessed values, and changes to those rates make changes to the tax levy. We were fortunate this year that the changes in equalization rates, there was none, and there were no changes in either town. Last year there was a change in one town, there was a change in the town of Islip, so that's why Smithtown had a higher tax rate than Islip. This year we are fortunate that the equalization rates did not change, and what happens there is taxes were not shifted from one side of town to the other. Last year when the equalization rate in Islip went up and it did not go up in the town of Smithtown, that shifted taxes from Islip to Smithtown. This year, because there have been no changes, this was not a player for the tax rates this year. So what happens? We take a look at assessed value, but first I'll show you here, these are the wild changes in equalization rates, and this is what has caused many of the changes over the past few years, but again, this year we are at 0 for both towns. Take a look at the assessed value for both Islip and Smithtown, and you'll see that the assessed value, the total, both commercial and residential assessed value for the town of Islip, it decreased at 2.7%, and for Islip, it decreased at 1.19%. The general rule, if assessed value declines, tax rates go up. So although the tax levy has not changed, because the assessed value declined, there's less of a pie to split the money amongst, and that's why the tax rates go up. And since the assessed value decreased at a slightly greater rate in Islip, there is a slightly higher portion that is going to Smithtown, and that's why you'll see that one town, Islip, is at 5%, and it's at 5.23% in the town of Smithtown. However, it is very low. Now, here is the big change. The homestead, if you take the district as a whole, and you look at our homestead or our residential assessed value, our residential assessed value actually increased by 0.42%. However, our non-homestead or our commercial industry, our commercial buildings assessed value decreased by almost 6%. This is what's causing the change from the 2.14% tax rate that we projected last year to the 5% that we are forecasting right now. Because the non-homestead rate assessed value decreased. What happens when assessed value decreases? Tax rates go up. What happens when the non-homestead assessed value goes down? More of the tax levy goes to the residential homeowners. And in this final slide here, I'll just illustrate it. This is, again, what's causing it. Last year, commercial industry paid 54.09% of the tax levy. Because their assessed value decreased by almost 6% this year, and the homestead value actually went up slightly, the commercial rate will be at 52.64% this year. So commercial industry will be paying a slightly smaller portion of the tax levy, and where's that portion going to be picked up by? The residential homeowners, and that's why the residential rates are going from 2.14% to the 5% that we predicted. Reason why that we're seeing that the commercial rate is still declining, commercial building owners are more aggressive in their tax certiorieries. And what a tax certiorari is when you file a grievance with the town saying that your property is overassessed. I'm sure we've all gotten those letters in the mail. But when you do that for the hotel and the golf course and stuff, properties that are assessed at very high rates, reductions do make an impact. Also, in the older buildings in the industrial park, there is some building going on. In the older buildings, there is still a considerable vacancy in there, and that is affecting their value as well.
Thank you. Do any members of the public have any questions concerning this presentation? None. Do any members of the board have any questions concerning the presentation? Very good. Moving on. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Do I have a motion concerning the tax levy? I will make the motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Craft, thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Number 9, the resolution concerning the dual tax rate. Do I have a motion? Thank you. I will second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Moving to committee reports. Beginning with the policy committee, I am the chair of that committee. The policy committee met on October 1st. We are proposing on tonight's agenda 4 policies for first reading, as well as 2 policies for second reading and adoption tonight. The next meeting will be on November 12th in this building at 7 o'clock. The audit committee, at our last meeting, I don't believe there was a date for a meeting scheduled after the initial meeting. Is there a new date yet?
We expect to meet in the beginning of November to review the draft audit report and management letter. We'll also meet with the claims auditor to review the instance reports.
Thank you, Mr. Kiley. I ask that you report back to the board after that meeting. The district steering committee, our first meeting will be October the 30th. HIV/AIDS committee meeting, Mr. Crappa, you advised us last meeting that your first meeting, I believe, is February 26th.
That's correct.
Any other
No change.
changes? Very good. Code of Conduct Committee, Mr. Scarito, your meeting is scheduled for April 21st, 2015. Any other changes? Thank you. Distinguished Alumni Committee, at our last meeting, Ms. Macaluso, you indicated that you were waiting on Ms. O'Connor to set a date for the meeting. Has that happened?
Not yet. That typically occurs toward the end of the year.
Towards the end of the school year or the...
December, January.
Okay. I asked that you just advise the board when that meeting is scheduled. The Safety Committee has a meeting on October 10th. Thank you. You'll report back to the board, please.
Yes.
Facilities Committee met on 10/6. I know Ms. Chris indicated that the report is being reviewed or has been reviewed. What's the next step for the Facilities Committee?
We will be presenting, the administration will be presenting to the board at our next board meeting, the findings of the facilities committee.
Okay, and that would be our community meeting on the
Yes.
26th, I believe? 27th?
21st?
21st?
21st, yes.
Thank you. Here at 8 o'clock. Advocacy Committee on September 17th, I believe, Mr. Kiley attended to meet the candidates night in Islip.
Yes.
Could you kindly report on that?
Sure. Meet the candidates meeting with Tom Croce and Adrian Esposito. They're both vying for the state senate in the 3rd Senate District. It was hosted by the Sable Board of Ed with 8 other Board of Ed members attending from districts that reside in that district, 3rd Senate District. Some of the topics that were discussed were Common Core, GEA, APPR, veterans, the tax cap, and fighting unfunded mandates, among a bunch of others as well. Both candidates understood and were receptive towards fixing the issues that low-income public school districts face, and to lobby the state and fight to preserve the public education all around.
Do you think it was a worthwhile event to attend?
Oh, yeah.
To send a representative?
Definitely.
Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Kiley, I believe you and Mr. Kraft have an appointment with Mr. Kennedy on October 26th. As a follow-up, is that still on?
That actually was changed. I have to get the new date.
Okay. When you get that new date, I ask that you advise the board. Okay. Moving on to policies, taking letter A first, policy 1050. Any comments from the board? Moving on to policy 2120.1, any comments from the board? Policy 2121, any comments from the board? And finally, policy 5405, any comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, those 4 policies will be sent back to committee to be prepared for second reading at our next business meeting. Concerning policy 5405, student wellness policy, I ask that that be referred to the Wellness Committee for their comments before our next policy committee meeting on the 12th of November, and we will address their comments at that time. Moving on to E, which is the adoption of policy 6700, our purchasing policy. I'll entertain a motion. Thank you, Mr. Scarito. I will second. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Moving on to F, policy 6830.2, staff use of cellular phones. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Ms. Macaluso. Thank you for the second. Discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Correspondence, the list of correspondence will be located over there by the coffee pot for anyone that wants to peruse, anyone who sent correspondence to the district. Moving on to discussion matters. A, the Hauppauge Educational Foundation. This item was on our last agenda. We had some questions as to whether certain members of the board needed to abstain because of their affiliation with the organization. Specifically, Mr. Scarito and I sit as directors on that organization. We were able to confirm with the attorney that we must abstain. I know that there are a couple of members from HEF here in the audience. Would anyone like to be heard on this discussion matter from the audience? Mr. Charlie? Do any members have any comments concerning HEF? Mr. Scarito?
Unfortunately, I do have to abstain, but I do want to say it's a great organization. They've done a lot of positive things for the school, and they really do work extra hard on hours that, they don't have to be there. So I'm in favor of it, yet due to council, I'm told not to vote on it, but it is a worthwhile cause.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more, although I can't vote on it. I do think the organization is great. One of the things we asked administration to advise us was the cost to the district of the teacher representative on HEF. Do we have that information?
Yes, we do. And as I explained to the board in the weekly update, it's difficult to give an exact cost because it depends upon the teachers who are seated as representatives. But we based the cost on the median salary for a teacher in Hauppauge. And if indeed we had to provide one coverage period for attendance at the meeting for the year, it would be approximately $1,100, $1,081. Naturally, if it's a 2-period coverage based on that teacher's schedule, it would be double that amount. And if we had 2 teachers that needed coverage, it would be 4 times that amount. But right now, we really only have 2 teachers seated on the committee. In the past, we didn't need coverage. I don't believe for Mr. Gibson we would need coverage because if the meeting ends by 9 o'clock, his workday does not begin until after 9 o'clock. So I think we're looking at 1 teacher this year. And as you know, the administrators that sit on the committee do not need coverage in terms of their position back in the building. So there's no cost to us.
Other than that, roughly $1,100, is there any cost to the district for HEF?
No.
Okay. Now, the posture that this is coming up, this was voted down back in July, I believe. Mr. Kiley was the only affirmative vote, or the losing vote, I should say. You, sir, are the only one that can revive the issue, and because of Mr. Scarito's and I's, terrible language, abstentions and Mrs. Mass's absence, it would have to be a unanimous vote to approve the coverage, reimbursement, for lack of a better word. So, Mr. Kiley, you want to be heard?
I would like to make a motion to reconsider the prior failure of the motion.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Fortmeyer. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, and this is just in favor of reconsidering the motion at this point. Motion to reconsider carries 6-0. Mr. Kyler, do you have a motion in chief now, and what would that be?
To put it up for a vote, to allow teachers attend that.
Very good. Do I have a second? Mr. Carafa, thank you. All those in, I'm sorry, discussion? Yes, Mr. Carafa?
Just want to make a quick comment to clarify that I don't think anyone on the board was ever against what HEF does. It was more the question of the coverage and the cost. So we all do think it's a worthwhile organization. It had nothing to do with that when we voted it down.
And I certainly, that's what it sounded like I was saying, I certainly didn't mean that. I knew, and I know that some of the members just needed some more information, which I think we have at this point. That being said, any further discussion on Mr. Kiley's motion to approve the HEF issue? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 4-0-2. Moving on to district goals, 14B. Ms. Chris.
As the board knows, we have begun our discussions to set the school district goals and high priority objectives. I'm passing around to the school board what is just a preliminary draft. Traditionally, we have set forth 3 goals. The first one being to provide all students with a comprehensive education that prepares them for the post-secondary opportunities. That's where we include high priority objectives we had for the academic program. The second one is to enhance school community connection to better support our students. And the third one is always in the area of fiscal oversight and facility maintenance through comprehensive planning. As you can see, I have listed recommended high priorities in each of the areas. I did so by taking some input from the board that was you provided to Dave, who then provided it to me. Some of the items that were specifically provided are more action items rather than being phrased as goals, so you may not see them quite worded the same way. I do want you to also know that I did present these and discuss these with the administrative team as well, meaning the directors and the principals, to gather some of their input. My recommendation to the board at this time is for you to take these, I only got them to you today, to take them, to look at them, to review them, and for us to schedule a meeting to sit down in a workshop kind of environment to really review the goals and to further review some of the things that you put forth as your ideas. And I have to say, some of your ideas are probably executive session items because they do involve personnel. So that's why I would like to have you consider this now, and we'll review it at a future date.
I think that suggestion is a good one, and I think also Ms. Mask would want to be heard on district goals. With that in mind, I move to table 14B to a special meeting on October 22nd here at 7 o'clock. I don't believe I need a motion for that. I will call a special meeting October 22nd, 7 o'clock to discuss district goals. My motion to table, do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Scrito. Discussion on the motion to table? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. 14B is tabled and moved to the special meeting that is being called on October 22nd in this room at 7 p.m. Moving on to new business. Do any members have new business? Mr. Scrito?
Mrs. Chris, the horrible story about the football player who's it's terrible. The question I have, and I know Joe and Mr. Butler here, the helmets that we have, football, lacrosse, I know it's big in the NFL, Joe, as far as that goes, they have better helmets now. Have we looked into giving our students better equipment? I mean, because I've seen some of the old equipment we use. I gotta be honest with you, I mean, not as bad as the old leather helmets, but some of the helmets that are used in the middle school, for example, are pretty old.
Before Joe speaks, I do want to mention to you and to the audience so that they understand that part of this is contained in the article that will be coming out in Horizons, because we do have and have always had a practice of sending our helmets out and having them reconditioned and certified by a company to ensure that they are proper head protection for our athletes. And we do that on an annual basis. So Joe, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, the helmet, Mrs. Chris said, the helmets are reconditioned on an annual basis. They're reconditioned on an annual basis, and they are replaced if needed to outfit our students. So we do have quality equipment that we purchase within our budget on a yearly basis to replace the ones that are either deemed not certified or just to have newer helmets. We're constantly doing that.
The only reason I had brought up was, I know in the NFL now, the crown, where a lot of the concussions are occurring, top part of the brain, they have changed the dynamics of the way their helmet are shaped. You'll see it's a different shape on top. Ours still the old design, so I was just wondering, certification is one thing we all know is a baseline. I don't want the baseline for our students, I want the best for our students. So I'm just saying maybe we should look into having better helmets. I'm not going to say that's going to stop concussions, but I am concerned. I don't want just the base. I understand there's a base, it's certified, Mrs. Chris, and it passes. But, these are children in my mind still, so I just think we should look into better helmets, possibly. I'm not saying that's going to cure it, but obviously there was 3 unfortunate men that passed away that same week from football.
Please.
Okay. There was an incident at the ladies soccer game at our field, and it came to my attention, I was unaware of this, that we don't provide security at soccer games or any other sport, I don't know. Is that something that we generally practiced in the past? And if so, should we look to possibly doing that? Because I know Mr. Butler had to get involved because the referee stopped the game. So I'm curious as to maybe, I thought there was security.
I don't know that we have security at every single game, but we certainly have chaperones at every game, and our yellow jacket people. And we have teachers serve in that capacity. We have some retired teachers serve in that capacity, and they are there to deal with any issues that arise in terms of the crowd. I do not know the specific issue that you're referring to, Rob. I'm sorry. Nothing was brought to my attention, so I can't really go beyond that.
That's fine, Mr. Chris, and I apologize I didn't get to it earlier, but my understanding is, and if I'm speaking in terms, the practice, they're not wearing the yellow jackets. So I know when we do the Wizards at the high school, we try to get people in yellow jackets so people know if there's an obstacle to find somebody with a yellow jacket. I'm just suggesting that we look into it and go forward with yellow jackets or somebody that should wear it, that's all. That's all I'm asking.
Any further new business? Ms. Macaluso?
I just have a question related to that. So what you're suggesting is to hire security for every game during the year, boys and girls?
If we're going to pay a teacher chaperone $38 or $40 an hour, I expect them probably to wear a yellow jacket or something. I mean, and we're in a different time zone now, so you really have to have people.
Is it that we have them there, they're just not wearing a jacket?
I assume that may be what's being said here. Yeah.
I think that's what I'm hearing. So they should be wearing the yellow jacket. Anybody
So
can-
we have them, they're just not with the jacket on to identify themselves. Okay, thank you.
Any, Mr. Craft?
That just led to something I thought of. What is in their job description then when they are chaperoning? Is it specified that they're supposed to take a security role as well? It already is there. Okay.
Any further new business? Does the administration have any new business they'd like to bring up? Just one note, this was our first board business meeting. It went well. Our next meeting on the 21st will be the community input meeting in which we'll have presentations and awards. That'll be here at 8 o'clock. At this point, we would normally adjourn, but we cannot. I believe we have to hang on until around 9:30. Ms. Rowe, you have your hand up.
Yes. Have you eliminated the question and answer period at this meeting?
Correct.
Okay.
You can always ask questions concerning items on the agenda. General questions concerning the district are now reserved for the community input where we can give them more time and attention.
Okay.
Okay? So at this point, I will entertain a motion to retire into executive session to further discuss the terms and conditions of an individual within the district. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Mr. Scrito. Second. Thank you, Ms. Macaluso. All those in favor? Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. We will reconvene at 9:30 or before, as soon as we get information concerning whether the library vote passed or failed. Thank you.